Hello everyone, this is the third video of our DeepDiff series, and today we are going to extend what we have discussed in the episode 2, which was related to ignore order. While comparing the JSONs and using ignore order, there can be various conditions which we might need to handle. Today's video is an extension of that. We are going to discuss those special situations and then we'll see how we can handle it. So the first part, it is related to report repetition. So there can be a condition where when you compare to JSON, one JSON may be having multiple duplicate elements. Second JSON have them unique, but all the elements are present. So while ignoring order, both of the JSONs will be considered to be equal if we will go with the ignore order equal to true option. By default, DeepDiff it doesn't consider that there are duplicate elements in one of the list. So if we want that we need to consider the duplicacy as a failure, then we need to use this option, report repetition equal to true. Let us see the concept. So when comparing the list, DeepDiff does not detect repeated items by default. If your data include duplicates, example separated user entries or maybe any other entries it can be, you need to explicitly enable repetition tracking. How we can do that? We need to pass this report repetition equal to true alongside with ignore order equal to true. So it allows DeepDiff to report when an item appear more than once in one structure but not in the other. So this is the key. So if the number of repeated item those are same for the same values in both the list, both the JSON, then it will not give you any error. It will consider them equal, right? So let us go to the demo part. I have already extended our previous project with this current episode 3, and here we have the first example. So here we have one expected list which is having expected JSON where we have a user list. It has ID and role, and here I have mentioned one of the entity is duplicated, but the other one it has role user ID2, role user ID2, role admin ID1, role admin ID1. So the order of these key value pair is different, but here we have one duplicate which is not present in the actual list, right? So what happens if we use just the ignore order part? So we remove this, and now let's see if it will give us some difference or it will consider these JSONs to be equal. Okay, it considered them to be equal. Right here we can see one passed, right? No difference found. So it considered them equal, right? Now we know like every value which is mentioned here, it can be detected in the other list, but it has one duplicate. How to spot it? There this report repetition will come into the picture. I'll comment this part, and now let us take this, and now let me trigger the test again. So here we can see it give us a mismatch now. And what is the mismatch all about? It is saying root user 1 new index 0. So if we see here, root user 1 at this particular location, it says new index is 0, but the old index was 1 and 2. So this entry, for this entry user ID role as user ID as 2, it is saying in the actual it is present at the 0th index. But in expected, we have two places where it is present, which is at index 1 and index 2. And it is saying old is repeating it twice. That means the expected, it is repeating it 2 times. And the value which is being repeated is 2 and user. So that's how this particular duplicate detection work. We need to use report repetition equal to true. Now coming to the second part, which is matching by value instead of id. So there is a case I have taken a case here where you will see that there is a scenario, there is example where it is matching the things by values instead of ids, and why it is happening. Let me show you that case. So here we have the whole, let me give you the brief of this concept. So when comparing the unordered list of dictionaries, DeepDiff uses a distance-based heuristic to match item. It does not prioritize any specific key like ID. Now the key behavior, DeepDiff compares entire items and select matches based on the overall similarity. If two items have identical values but different IDs, it will match them and report the ID differences. So it doesn't consider, like we know, like by reading we can see ID is something on basis of which most of the time the comparison should happen. But DeepDiff by default doesn't know that. It gives you the differences on basis of a particular algorithm which it follows, which we are going to discuss and see in the demo. For the demo part here, I have taken this example where we have two JSONs, T1 and T2. It is having ID1 present here, ID1 present here, then ID2 has element 781. Here ID2 have element 78. Here ID3 have element 78, and here ID3 have element 781. So whatever like the ID2 has, it has the same value here. Similarly, whatever ID3 has, our T2 has the same values here. Okay. So here ID2 value 78, here ID3 value 78. Now when we check the difference here using the ignore order, let us see what it gives to us. I will just change the tag here, and what it gives to us. So it says that these are the changes it could identify. It said ID has changed. What it did, it didn't tell us the difference in the values. It told us that there is difference in the IDs. How? Because this 781. If you let us start with the first. So first is this 78 ID2. It says 78. It is present here, but the difference is in ID. Then for 3, it says 781 is present. 781 is present. Difference is in ID. Why it compared values, not the IDs? Why it didn't tell us, well, your keys are matching, the values are not mismatching? What is the reason for that? Let me show you. So here is the whole concept, how it is working. So DeepDiff compares each item in T1 with each item in T2 and scores them based on how similar they are. If the ID was the same and the value was different, why didn't DeepDiff just say that? Right? That's what we were discussing. Why it didn't say that your values are different, IDs have been found? It matched them by overall similarity using its internal distance scoring. How that works. On high level, if there is exact match, then the distance score is 0. If there are different values, then the score is 1. If the difference is in structure or length, then the score is higher than 1. Example, list 781 versus 78. Here we have difference in the structure. There is one extra element, right? So if the values are mismatching, like one value is 7, the other value is 8, the difference would be considered as 1. Even the value is 7 and 9, then the difference will be in the integer values only. But here the difference is in the structure. Difference is in how many elements are in the list and what is the element which is missing. So that is having more value than the values within the single entries. Now here I have mentioned the logic how it worked. So when ignore order equal to true, DeepDiff compares all possible pairs between T1 T2, calculate a distance score, finds the best permutation, lowest total distance, which is then report field level difference basis upon this logic. Example, now I have taken two example here. One is what would have happened, what has happened when it told us the IDs are different. So for example, here ID2 value 781, ID3 value 781. So values are matching because here, as we were just saying, the difference in the list structure that has highest score. So before that, it will see which other differences it can spot where the distance score will be minimum. So it will be minimum when it will be having a difference between two integers instead of two list. So that's why it compared this 781 with the other 781 and it told us that the ID is different between this. So total distance in this particular case, it comes out to be 1 because ID 2 versus 3 is here we have a score of 1. Value is identical. Now the other case, let us take the other case where we say that ID2 781, for ID2 we have 78. Now this 2 versus 2 it is matching, the score is 0, but this value 781 versus 78 it is having different length, so score will be more than 1. That's why the total distance is 1 plus. So it didn't go into this and told us that yeah, well, your IDs are matching, the values are different. It gave us this option that your IDs are having some mismatch. That's how this deep diff work. So what are the complexities? Length is difference, element mismatch, then structure complexity. Due to these, the score is 1 plus here. So take away from this, deep diff doesn't know your ID is special. It matches by what looks most similar overall. Now suppose if we want to compare using a specific key only within the JSON, then how to go about it? For that, we have this iterable compare function. It is similarly what we did in the episode 2, where while ignoring the order, we wanted to customize that we want to ignore order, but only for a specific key. So there we used ignore order function, and then we provided the value of it. Similarly, here in this case, we have iterable compare function, and there you can define on basis of which you want to compare your JSON. So here we say that we want to compare using ID and we put it in try, and then here we have accept. We accept the exception and then we raise cannot compare, and this cannot compare we are taking it from deepdiff.helper. Okay, so this is the syntax of this. Like if this ID is not found or something, then this cannot compare will come into the picture. Now, before going into the demo, let us go to the theory part. So to guide DeepDiff's matching logic, you can define a custom comparison function This lets you control how items are paired, such as matching by ID. How we can do this? We can do this by iterable compare function. It allows you to specify a rule for comparing items in the list. For example, you can match dictionaries by their IDs field instead of the full content. Now let us go to the demo part. So here we have the same example where previously it told us, well, your IDs are different. Now it will tell us that your values are different. Let me trigger the test. Here we are. So here what it is saying that a item is added. Root 2, value 2 and 1. So for root 2, value 2, it is saying like for ID 3, here we have 7, 8, but here in the actual and the TOT2, we have one extra. So it is saying at the second index, one has been added. Similarly, iterable item removed, root 1, value 2. Root 1 is this, value 2 is this. So for ID 2, one has been removed from the T2, right? So here it is telling us the differences. Now going back to the theory part. So the key takeaway from here is like if you want DeepDiff to match by a given custom order, then you can define it using iterable compare function, just like how we did it with ID in this case. Final notes from this particular episode. So if you want to check the duplicates, use report repetition. And then we also understood how this ignore order true works and how the distance scores works in this and how the matching happen on basis of that. And then we also see how this iterable compare function work to anchor comparison for the specific case. So that's all for this videos. In future videos, I'll be coming with the more detailed concept about DeepDiff. Stay tuned. Thank you everyone.